You have an aircraft carrier which is been commissioned, but it doesn't have a combat air arm. The Navy needs really to push its case very firmly and very persuasively, because otherwise we are going to be left in a similar situation where we have just a floating dock in the middle of the sea, but no aircraft on it.
On September 2, Prime Minister Narendra Modi commissioned the country's first ever indigenous aircraft carrier, the INS Vikrant. With this, India joined a select group of nations which have the capacity to develop an indigenous aircraft carrier on their own. Only the US, UK, China, Russia, and France had developed their own aircraft carriers before this. The ship, with a displacement of 42,800 tons, was designed by the Navy's Warship Design Bureau and built by Cochin Shipyard Limited, a public sector shipyard under the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterway. This move is also being looked at as a step forward to address the security concerns in the Indo-Pacific region and in the Indian Ocean. This commissioning of INS Vikrant is being hailed across the media, especially after a marquee event with Prime Minister Modi alongside the Defence Minister and others. Despite the show of power, the carrier will only be fully operational by the end of 2023, which is why some are calling it seaworthy but not battleworthy as of today. For some defense analysts, there is little more than chest thumping in this development. There are concerns about the delay and the six-fold price rise in the INS Vikrant's commissioning. We spoke with defense analyst Rahul Bedi some time ago, and we asked whether jubilation around INS Vikrant being indigenous is really fair or not.
It's still quite commendable for the Indian shipbuilding industry as well as the Navy to have produced and such a platform. But I believe and I think, and a lot of people within the service also concur, although they will not say as much, that the celebrations were a little over the top, and the kind of hysteria and the kind of publicity that the commissioning generated was a little in excess of what had really been achieved. It will eventually be India's second aircraft carrier. India already operates one aircraft carrier, INS Vikramaditya, which India got second hand from the Russians, and which was commissioned and joined service with the Indian Navy around 2014. So this will be the second carrier. The only problem is that this carrier, when it was conceived with a fighter aircraft on board of the MiG-20, the Russian MiG-29Ks. Now the MiG-29Ks, Indian Navy bought 45 MiG-29Ks between 2009 and about 2014 or 15. And it bought 45 of these for close to roughly about $3 billion. But unfortunately, the MiG-29K has not proven to be a very efficient aircraft. It has been criticized very roundly and very soundly by the Comptroller and Auditor General and by various other committees, parliamentary committees. And it has been found to be inefficient. That is a major problem with the aircraft carrier Vikrant, is its air complement or its combat arm, which has not really been finalized as yet. And in any case, even with the MiG-29s, the Navy claims that it is not going to be operational till the end of next year. Now, even if the Navy sticks to its timelines, the Vikrant will not be able to be deployed before end 23 or beginning of 24. That's a big problem. Secondly, as I've mentioned earlier, the aircraft, the MiG-29, are not very efficient, so it's going to be deployed with an inefficient and a less capable aircraft than the Navy desires. So this shows very bad planning on the side of not only the Navy, but also the Ministry of Defense, which has constantly changed the goalposts and constantly changed its requirements and constantly changed its operational needs. And it has not really finalized anything, which is very unfortunate, because These things are very, very expensive and they cost a huge amount of money.
Before we get into further details, let's lay down some of the basic facts about INS Vikrant. So, INS Vikrant is 262 meters long and 62 meters wide. The Indian Navy said that the carrier is as big as two football fields put together and 18 floors tall. It weighs 43,000 tons. The ship can also accommodate 1,600 crew members and 30 aircrafts. It has a maximum designated speed of 28 knots or 52 kilometers per hour and an endurance of 7,500 nautical miles. Lieutenant Commander Sai Krishnan, a senior engineer officer, said that the four engines on board together build up 88 megawatts of power, which is enough to supply a city. But the biggest USP of INS Vikrant is that 76% of the ship's parts are sourced indigenously. Around 500 Indian firms were roped in to make India's first homegrown aircraft carrier. These were some of the positive things about INS Vikrant that you might have heard about in the media. But there are some facts that also need to find the light of the day. INS Vikrant is not the biggest aircraft carrier that India owns. India's other aircraft carrier, INS Vikramaditya, can carry more than 30 aircraft. The UK Royal Navy's HMS Queen Elizabeth can carry about 40, and US Navy's Nimitz Classics carriers can accommodate more than 60 aircraft. The INS Vikrant is late by nearly 7 years and faced a six-fold price rise overrun from its original 2000 project sanction of rupees 3,216 crore to over rupees 20,000 crore currently. The 40,000 ton short takeoff barrier arrested recovery, which is also known as Stobar carrier, will be commissioned later this month, but without its aviation flight complex, which is critical to operating its combat air arm. It's also important to question whether this is truly a Make in India project. The Aviation Flight Complex, or AFC, is being supplied by a Russian company named Nevsko Design Bureau. The NDB says that it faced recurring delays over design requirements to meet the Indian Navy's specific operational needs alongside differences over its eventual cost. This is also the reason why INS Vikrant won't be operational for the next 18 months at least, until the end of 2023. While Cochin Shipyard Limited were right in claiming that 76% of the carrier's overall float content was local in origin, but nearly 70% of its fight content and an almost equal proportion of its move category is imported, adding substantially to its escalated building cost. The carrier's two aircraft lifts, used to house fighters 3 decks below the flight deck for storage, servicing and to be armed and bringing them back up again, were from the UK. The ammunition lifts were of US origin and the aircraft hangar doors were Swedish. Not just that, Vikrant was also armed with 32 Israeli origin Barak 8 medium range surface to air missile. The 4 turbines that enables this 40,000 ton weighing warship to speed up at 52 km per hour, those were manufactured by US based General Motors. Italy's Fincantieri, France's Naval Group and Spain's state-owned Navantia shipbuilders were also believed to have been marginally involved in providing design expertise related to the carrier's air group's integration. Having said that, 23,000 tons of warship-grade steel that was jointly developed by DRDO and Steel Authority of India for the carrier, 2,500 kilometers of electric cables and 150 kilometers of specialized pipes were all obtained from scores of domestic, private and public sector manufacturers. So, it has to be noted that while a lot of float content of INS Vikrant is made in India, its important fight and move components are not really indigenous. So as INS Vikrant was commissioned, there were reports of India building its third aircraft carrier. Is it possible? We asked Mr. Rahul Bedi. Here's what he had to say.
Navy is lobbying and has been lobbying for the last 4 or 5 years, in fact, for a third aircraft carrier. In fact, about 3 or 4 years ago, the MOD had sanctioned about a small amount of money, about 30 odd crores, to come up with the concept of a third aircraft carrier. Now, a third aircraft carrier is going to be a much larger carrier. The Navy anticipates a carrier of about 65,000, 70,000 tons, which can embark about 45 fighter aircraft and that many helicopters and various other unmanned aerial vehicles. Now that you are looking at a cost of anywhere between 10 to 15 billion dollars. Now, that again is a problem. The Navy claims and the shipyards claim that with the experience they have with the Vikrant, they can build the third aircraft carrier much quicker. It would not take 17 years from the time they cut steel to the time they commission the carrier. Even if you cut the time by half, you are still talking about 8 or 9 years. Secondly, the technologies that are required for an aircraft carrier of that nature and of that tonnage are not available in India and they will need to be imported. But this is questioned by the Indian Air Force, which says that with such a huge expense of up to 15 to 20 billion dollars, the Air Force, with its maritime fleet of fighter aircraft, it can deal with the problem a lot better from shore. Now, this is a debate that remains unresolved, and it is a debate that's going to continue, I think, for a long time to come because till the Navy gets approval from the Ministry of Defense, nothing is going to happen.
Meanwhile, the Indian Navy aims to acquire 26 multi-role carrier-borne fighters, which are also known as MRCBF, including 8 twin-seat trainers to operate off Vikrant, for which France's Rafale fighter and Boeing Super Hornet were under evaluation after recent trials. But a recent report puts a question mark on that as well. Even after building a state-of-the-art aircraft carrier, a Bloomberg report suggests that India will fall critically short of helicopters by 2026 and face a shortfall of hundreds of fighter jets by 2030, apparently due to India's Make in India policy. The report further states that India, the world's biggest importer of military hardware, still doesn't manufacture enough weapons locally to meet its needs. There are a few more unanswered questions about the aircraft carrier technology becoming completely obsolete, as some countries like China have developed a missile specifically to target aircraft carriers. We asked Mr. Rahul Bedi if aircraft carriers do not have a future.
Now, very few countries actually export that kind of advanced technology, so that's going to be a challenge for the Navy. But the bigger challenge is going to be whether aircraft carriers are necessary in the current environment that prevails in the world, because there are area denial and area access technologies with missile systems that countries like China have. Now, a carrier battle group is not just a carrier, it is escorted by a collection of submarines, warships, corvettes. So, you are talking about a carrier battle group that has something like 15 or 20 other platforms accompanying it. So, and also an aircraft carrier is a sitting duck, because in these days of satellite technology, you can easily pick out an aircraft carrier on the sea, and with missile systems that can travel hundreds of kilometers, which the Chinese have developed very successfully, you can knock out an aircraft carrier in the middle of the sea and make it completely immobile. So the effectiveness or the operational effectivity of an aircraft carrier is also being questioned.